ballad. Your satellite feed has been interrupted.
Digital, get down.
Hey guys, Jacob here. Just going to keep this short and sweet. Just wanted to thank you guys so much again for listening to part 1 of our Alex Greg's interview. And, the following will be part 2, and we got to talk about, tons of things with JC, the split up with the band, or the hiatus. And, let's get right to it.
David Foster, in between No Strings and Celebrity, David Foster had hit me up and said, I want you to produce a ballad for me for one of my groups. And I was like, fuck yeah, it's David Foster.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
Did the song. I thought he was going to call back and say, okay, make some changes. He called back, goes, song's perfect. Great. Send the master to, and I was like, what? I haven't mixed it yet. He goes, no, it sounds perfect. So,
Wow.
and he said, come to my house. I want to talk to you about something. So I go to his house, and I ask him, by the way, why did you hire me to do a ballad? I've never done a ballad before. I have, but nothing got released on a major label. He goes, well, didn't you do that ballad for Celine? I said, no. He goes, I hired the wrong. He hired the wrong guy. So he goes, well,
Oh, no.
He goes, I'm glad I got you because you did such a great job. So so he goes and I'm wearing leather pants, spiky hair. I'm skinnier at the time. I'm, thinking I'm cool. He goes, you got a cool look about you. And I've got this show called Pop Stars that I'm developing. This is pre-American Idol. He goes, well, I want you to be one of the judges. I said, well, when is it going to be? And he told me the dates, and I said, Mike, that's when I'm supposed to be working with Michael Jackson. It came down to, do I do this TV show or work with Michael Jackson? I was like, fuck the show, I'm going to do Michael Jackson. So I told Brad, hey, Brad, why don't you do the TV show, and I'll work with Michael. And so that was the beginning of our kind of division in Rip Rock and Alex G. And so the Michael Jackson thing came up because he heard Digital Get Down and looked on the album credits and was like, I want this guy to work on my record. And it was great. I got to spend time with Michael Jackson, and it was surreal, and I was impressed on how professional he was. The dude knew everything in the studio, like every piece of gear, like he knew his shit. And when you think about it, well, he should, right? Because this is all he's done his whole life. But it was just cool to see Michael Jackson talking about, let's run it through the 160 because I like the sound on my voice, and then we should, he knew what was going on. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and I saw some not weird kiddie stuff, but like eccentric stuff. Like he had some animals brought to the studio. He had like his birds outside in the parking lot, and but great guy, really nice guy, and royalty, man. I grew up with the guy, and
Yeah, absolutely.
listening to him, not grew up.
And that's
with
why
him.
you chose to do that after, instead of the show. I mean, that was who wouldn't have wanted to do that? That's like as high as you could get, in your profession.
Exactly. In retrospect, I should have done the damn TV show.
Yeah, right.
Because
with the way the
nowadays,
money stuff worked out, yeah.
This is before, being on a reality show, you can spawn off into all sorts of things. If I did the TV show, I could have been the next Randy Jackson. I definitely would have been like Simon, because I've always been known for just like telling people how I've gotten in lots of trouble lots of times sitting in a room with people, and I'm like, I think the song is shit. This because I'm not wasting my time. So that's what I would have done if I was on the show.
Well, I wanted to ask you about you kind of mentioned, again, talking about you and Brad working together. How did you guys actually like work together? Were you doing more one thing and he was doing another? Like, what was the dynamic between you two?
Well, in the beginning, the reason why me and Brad worked together well is I was the computer geek, the programmer geek, and Brad had great ideas, and he would say, and he knew how to play keys better than I was. I was very, coming from the hip hop world, I didn't learn keyboards. Like, all my hand skills were on SP1200s and turntables, and Brad knew how to make chords. So that's where we started. And Brad was also very good with the gift of the gab. Like, he could go into the labels and sell us and be like, you should hire us to do, your remixes or do songs and stuff. So it was a symbiotic relationship. He knew how to use everything in the studio, but he wasn't a technical geek. Like, to him, sitting there and programming like a bass sound for half an hour was like, why are you doing that? We just use a preset, So that's where we combined. I would like to program stuff, and he was more into preset. So that's how that relationship worked, and it started splitting when. No, I don't want. I'm not trying to speak because Brad died like a year and a half ago, and so I don't really want to speak ill of him, but the celebrity and the money we were making turned us into two different people, myself included. Not for the better, we became very arrogant and fuck you, I'm better. I've got the, nowadays I go, I was lucky. I have talent. I'm good at what I do, but I'm definitely not the best, and back then I thought, well, NSYNC blew up mainly because of Max and the guys in the town, the label, but also because of me, and Brad had the same attitude, and I wanted to get away from pop music, and that's when we started South Raucous Crew and signed to Diplo's label. And so I started going into this underground Diplo type world, and Brad wanted to stay in the more shiny pop world. So that's where the division started to happen. Plus we were, arrogant. So, it started to kind of wedge us apart because of our arrogance. The Brad that everyone listened to when he was selling us to do stuff on the record, it turned more into him going, well, we got the #1 fucking record, so you have to hire us, and that's that, and we're not going to do anything unless you pay us money up front. And I kind of had the same attitude too, so I'm not blaming it on him, but our attitudes changed, and so the labels didn't really want to work with the two of us because the arrogance of us, and I got away with it because I hid behind the music in the studio and the whole Diplo thing. He was more the front person, so I kind of got to hide behind. I didn't have to, because I never liked dealing with label people. I got along with them, but I was very, like, for instance, like David Foster played me Michael Bublé before he signed him. He's like, I'm thinking of signing this guy. Let me play a couple songs. And, he's singing these kind of Frank Sinatra songs. And I just kind of leaned back. And I was like, David, don't waste your money. That guy ain't going to sell shit. Nobody wants to listen to some young guy sing standards and stuff like that. They want to hear, at the time it was all like Neptunes and stuff was coming in. They want to hear this cool stuff. Don't waste your money, and then of course he signs Michael Bublé and becomes a huge star. And next time I saw David, I was like, oh, I was kind of wrong about that, So, yeah. And, the music industry shifted from shiny pop to the kind of Neptune sound, and the more R&B, a bit more urban influence, which is where I came from. And so it started to hurt when I couldn't get gigs because they were like, well, we don't want boy band style music. And I'm like, no, but that's not all that's why I changed my name into South Rock, is for, so I could start fresh without people going, because they always think that artists, they only do one thing. They don't realize that artists want to do new stuff, and sometimes they do music that they don't like anymore because that's what people want from them, but deep down inside they want to do something new.
Well, I wanted to ask you then, so, after Celebrity, the next NSYNC related album that comes out is Justified, right? Mm-hmm. So was there any talk of you being involved in that, or was it more Justin was totally off doing his own thing, since you kind of normally wrote with JC primarily?
Biggest regret of my life, I remember the day we were at a nightclub called the Roxy in Orlando. And actually, let me back up. The night before, we're all at the house, and Lance comes in and basically says, I'm going into space, so I'm taking time off. And we're all just sitting there like, what? What do you mean? I've got this cosmonaut training, I got a sponsor, and so, yeah, we need to take some time off. So after the shock kind of wore off, everyone got a bit excited. Joey and Chris were like, oh, I could use a break. And Chris wanted to do some solo music. And Joey was, starting to get into family life. And Lance, he was also doing writing and stuff for like movies and stuff, as well as the space thing. So pretty quickly that night, Justin was like, well, this might be a cool time for me to do some solo songs, just to get it out of his head. Because, you're on stage singing the same song every night, pretending that you're loving it. Every night it's like, I love singing this song, but deep down it's like you're singing the same song every night. So as an artist, you're looking for some time to just not even put out a record, just to do something different. So Justin was like, well, this would be a good time for me to maybe get some songs that have been in my head out onto tape. And JC was not thinking of doing a solo record. He was more interested in, well, great, maybe I can write some songs for other artists, and he had songs in his head that he wanted to get out that weren't really NSYNC style, so they always stayed in his head. So he was like, this is a good time for me to, same thing, put these ideas onto tape and maybe write songs with other people and, just take a break. So the next night or a couple of days later, we're at this Roxy nightclub, and life-changing fork in the road hits me. Justin comes up and says, I want you to, do some songs with me for my thing. I don't know if it's going to be a record. I just want to, let's write some songs together. An hour earlier, JC had asked me the same thing. I have some songs, let's get in the studio, write some. And me and JC were, we were all friends, and I was friends with all of them, but me and JC were probably close. I was closest with JC because we had lived together. And, so I had a bit of, what's the word? Like loyalty or allegiance to him.
Sure.
So, I told Justin, I was like, I won't have time. I already told JC I'd be, working with him. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, if you change your mind, let me know. And I was like, cool. And, retrospect, maybe I should have done it Justin, worked with Justin. But if I did work with Justin, maybe his album wouldn't have been as good as it was, because he basically was like, I want you to do the record. No, I can't do it. Okay, well, I'll go to the next producer guy I know, Pharrell. So he then went with Pharrell and Timberland, and that was a great marriage for him. And yeah, so that's where that split came. And so Justin finishes he finishes the record, and I get an advance copy of it, and he calls me on his birthday and says, "Did you listen to the record?" I said, "Yeah." No, this came out the wrong way. He goes, "What do you think?" I go, "I think it's great, but I think you're capable of more, something better." And he took it a little bit, like, he's like, "Oh," and that kind of, then the phone call kind of ended, and then I was like, I don't think he got what I meant. What I meant was, when the sexy, what was it, what was it, his next album called, the one with Sexy Back on it? Sexy Love Sounds?
Love Sounds, yeah.
Love Sounds. So when that record came out, I called him and I said, "Remember what I told you? This is the record that I thought you should have done first." Like, that's what I thought, because Love Sounds to me was totally where I thought he should have gone, instead of the more R&B thing. Now, once again, I was wrong, because it worked out. But I never really got to explain in full. Well, I did, but I don't think he understood that it was kind of a compliment when I heard the Justified record. And I was like, "It's great, but I think basically what I was saying is, I think you still have more. I think you still have another level to go,
Right, yeah.
And when the Love Sounds album came out, I went, that's what I expected Justin to do. Because the Justified record was a very heavily Pharrell influenced record, and the Love Sounds record, I could hear Justin's creativity really popping through on that record.
And then when you're working with JC and his album, can you talk about the difference? It seems like was there an effort to go in a totally different direction than Justin went in?
Yes, and the label said that right off the top. They said, "Do not make an album that sounds like Justin's record," and for obviously reasons. But they wanted it to be very different than Justin's. And now, Clive was just about to sell the company, so the last conversation I had with Clive was, he said, "Look, when I signed NSYNC, I knew I was getting three things. I was getting a group, and I was getting 2 solo acts out of it." He goes, "Justin's the light bulb that burns twice as bright, but half as long. He's like a Michael Jackson. He's just going to be bang, 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 bang. But he won't be that long-term artist." And I thought that was a weird thing to say until the next sentence. He goes, "And with JC, I've got the next, what's the guy's name?" He's like, "I got another Sting, or who's the guy that wrote, This I Promise You?"
Richard Marx.
Richard Marx. He goes, "With JC, I got like a Sting, Richard Marx type of artist who might not sell as many records, but will be a long burn. So both successful, just Justin will be quick and fast in your face, and JC will be more of the slow burner." Now, that didn't happen. Justin, his light bulb was twice as bright, but he lasted just as long. And JC's got, his career dramatically got shifted right after that conversation, when Clive had sold Jive and Barry Weiss had kind of taken over. And Barry was very into the urban sound. That's, he was overseeing, the R. Kellys and the P.D. Pablos and all the other, urban jive acts. And, loved the Justin record because it was an urban record. So Barry was coming from an urban mentality. And so, me and JC and Brad would go in the studio and we write a bunch of songs. And Some Girls Dance with Women was a joke. We were at a nightclub looking down, and we see these girls who are obviously not lesbian, but they're acting like they're lesbian, and they're doing it to get attention from guys that are gonna think, I'm gonna take these girls home and bang them. So we thought that was a joke, These girls dance with each other to try to get guys to think that they might get a threesome, and really it's not. They're just doing it to get it. So we were, slightly drunk, went back to the studio at JC's house in LA. He had a studio in there. And we did that song. And that got put in the little pile of songs that we sent to Jive. And I don't know why we added it to we just kind of wanted to show we were, we just sent them everything so they didn't think we were doing nothing. And Barry was like, this is it. This should be the single. And we said, well, we got some more in the works. And he goes, no, this. And Barry was thinking on an urban side, which Clive had, said, don't do it. And Barry was also like, don't do urban, but he just couldn't help himself. He heard an urban track, and I don't know, he just liked it. And we were like, well, we don't really want the song on the album, to be honest, because it made us sound stupid, but it was supposed to be kind of a joke and more of a play on like, hey, it's funny, but it's kind of true. So,
yeah,
then we did All Day Long, A Dream About Sex. And that started off, I think JC played the riff on the guitar. And then we were like, fuck it, let's do a Duran Duran type, Killers meets Duran Duran type song. Once again, thinking, label's not going to like it. We loved it. It was good fun. But like you said in your podcast, it didn't really show off his vocal ability, and it really wasn't a melodic song. It was more of a party jam, which we were cool with.
And I think that
because we knew we had other songs on the record that would show his vocal ability, and people knew that he could sing from previous songs. So we thought, yeah, cool, go on the record. And we thought, this might be a cool single, because The Killers was just starting to come out. So we thought, maybe we can separate JC and Justin by having JC kind of be more attached to the pre-hipster movement. That was our thing.
Yeah, and I mentioned that like that pop, there was even a segment of pop that was going in that direction too, where it was more, there were more guitars and things like that in there, and that was even the a lot of those things were kind of seeping in there. But that was the thing, like you said, we talked about, the different, how his voice was maybe utilized and that kind of thing. It's like, and it's easy for us to play, look at this back in retrospect and say, oh, it should have been this way or whatever. But I guess that really makes a lot of sense, that it being like you're trying to differentiate it from Justin's record, and then the directive that you're getting down from the label now and saying that they want to go in this direction, even it's something that you're like, we're not sure about this. So that really paints a better picture for us, like to really, find out more behind the scenes of what was going on.
Yeah, we were getting conflicting direction from the label. Don't do urban, but we like this urban type song you guys did. So we were getting kind of two things going at the same time, and we couldn't really please anybody. It was either too pop, it was either too different, or it was too urban and sounded close to what something Justin might have done. And which is funny later on, because then Sexy Back comes out with the same type of non-melodic vocal, distorted vocal, party vocal, but obviously that song had a lot of other great things going on with it. So, when Sexy Back came out, it just kind of reinforced that, okay, a pop song could be like that, but Justin had already in his previous singles established his vocal ability.
I wanted to ask about that too, because I think another aspect of all this that we didn't take into account for, because I work in music marketing, I create just all types of social content and lots of other content for record labels. I actually got my start with Jive back in 2006, doing like some editing and video editing for them.
Right.
I think like it seems like to me, and I mentioned in the podcast about the cover and everything, it seemed like there was two different worlds. Like there must have been a huge difference in the marketing budgets that they had. Is that an accurate assessment on my part?
Yes. They heard what JC's album was going to sound like, and it was all over the place. And they didn't have the confidence in the record that they did with Justin's. So that also hurt us in a way where, you know, if they had the confidence, because we're about halfway through the record at this point, and what we wanted to do was start spreading the wings. Okay, let's get some other songs, you know, with other producers and stuff like that. The same way, like I was the one that brought BT in to do pop.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh really?
yeah, because I was a huge BT fan, and Justin had written the song, and I was like, I don't have enough time, but there's this dude BT who's amazing, and Jive. I told Jive about him, and they checked him out, and they're like, this guy never done a pop song in his life. He's underground. I'm like, I know, but that's what will be so cool about it. You know, the Justin and Wade's top line was pop enough that, you know, a good combination in pop music is having a pop top line with an underground track. You can disguise it that way. So, you know, so now we're halfway through JC's record, and we want to start talking about, well, let's bring in some new hot guys, you know, and the budget wasn't quite there, and they weren't quite excited about that because they felt, you know, the little team that we had was capable enough. So we kind of not got the raw end of the deal, but we didn't have the access to the resources that we thought we were going to have that Justin had. And,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
also at that time, you know, the record industry was starting to change. So, spending a lot of money wasn't, you know, before it was like, we could spend all the money we want because we're selling tons of records. But with the JC album, they thought, well, he's not going to sell as much as Justin, so let's not blow the same amount of money that we did on Justin's record on JC's, because it's not going to be as high as a good rate of return on the investment. This is where art and corporate start colliding, right?
What's JC's like reaction to all this? The sense of not knowing him personally, but like you said, like he's, even the way Clive set it up, that he's like, you know, he's an artist and everything, and that he has a long tail and he's playing the long game, and his career could be a viable artist, like a real artist. What's his reaction to all this at this time?
At this time, JC's, you know, he doesn't, you know, we speak a lot as friends, and I've never really asked him what, you know, like, hey dude, like what was going through your mind? Like I more just picked up on his vibe. But for me personally, I think not that he felt abandoned, but it hurts you as an artist when you sense that your label is not that confident about your project when you're not even done it. You're like halfway through it, because now you're feeling like, oh great, you know, it's like it makes you not as excited about your own work, and it's scary as well, because JC also, now when we made this record, we didn't say let's make a hit record. It was more of like, let's just get these songs in your head out and let's just have some fun. And it wasn't the attitude of like, well, we're part of the, you know, NSYNC, which was huge, so no matter what you do, people are gonna buy it. It wasn't that attitude. It was more of like, JC basically made a decision that like, if Jive isn't gonna be 100% behind his record, that he was going to make a record at least that he wanted to make. And not... JC's not a person that says... He doesn't like the idea of, let's make a hit song. JC is more of, let's make a great song that we love. And if it happens to become a hit, then that's great. But he wasn't writing anything going, I'm going to write a hit song. He was more of, I want to write something that I've always wanted to write and try styles that I always wanted to write, you know, because now the label isn't, you know, on his back. They're almost letting him do whatever he wants because they're just like, well, we know we're not going to sell as much as Justin, so we'll just give more control to JC and, you know, keep him happy. So in retrospect, I don't know if he's not one of regrets, you know, but I think if we could go back in time and change some things, maybe, but probably not. I think we probably would have made the same record. And the other difference between Justin and JC, and everybody knows this just by watching them, that Justin is a very driven. It's in his DNA to be a star. He doesn't have to try. It's just built in with him, and everybody that met him or heard him knew that about him. So yeah. he was more into the interviews and the, you know, promotion and stuff like that. And JC is more of a quiet artist who prefers his privacy and is not one to go out and be seen on red carpets and things. That's just not how he is. He's more of I'll let my art speak for itself, and if you like it, cool. If you don't, cool too. But, you know, so there was a much different expectation between the two records, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the last minute, it felt like, you know, Jive had kind of abandoned any hope of it being a smash record. So we'll just kind of, you know, let them do what they want. And if it fails, we didn't lose as much money. And if it sells, we'll make money. As of with the Justin record, it was a very, you know, high confidence, financially, that there would be a good return on it. And Justin would do the whole game of promoting the record in a way that Jive wanted. And Jive also knew that JC was not the type of, you know, self-promotion type of artist.
And that's what's interesting, to get all this, like, again, from your perspective, working on the record, working so closely with JC as you have for so many years. Like, that's what's cool to hear about all this. Because, again, like, it's easy for us to have a certain opinion of it or whatever, just like listening to it, you know, especially 15 years later. But right. This is what's so cool about hearing all this insight.
Yeah, it starts to make sense why the album sounded how it did, performed how it did. And, you know, when it came to the artwork on the cover, that was one that kind of threw everyone for not sure how everything got approved, but when the album cover was shown, I don't think anybody was really happy with it, but it was Jives was more in the thing of like, it's good enough, that's cool, and then yeah, okay. But nobody was really jumping up and down. Like, JC came up with the concept, but the concept didn't quite go on photo or paper how he had it in his mind. You know, it looked kind of photoshopped and, you know, but at that time, you know, JC wasn't, you know, he wasn't the big star that could demand, fuck it, I want to redo the album cover. You know, it was more like, it's good enough, JC, don't worry about it. So, you know, I'm not really talking crap about the label, but I think everybody involved will agree that, you know, Jive went through a major shift in staff and values and vision when Clive left, and it's like if Clive had stayed there like 6 months longer when we made that record, I think the JC record would have been phenomenal, because Clive was he wouldn't let anything come out half-assed. He would have definitely said, no, who do you guys want to do other songs with? Let's put them on. Let's spend the money. He really listened to his artists, and if Clive was there and JC said to Clive, I'm not happy with the cover, or I don't want this as the single, Clive is the type of person that would listen, and most likely would educate JC or myself or anybody else on a decision that didn't make sense to us. He was great at that. If we didn't like something or didn't understand it, he would give an explanation why it should be this way, and 99% of the time he was right. But with the shift in staff at Jive, there wasn't that one driving force or visionary. Barry was good at his job, but he wasn't Clive Calder.
And then after this album comes out, I guess it was not too long until like it was officially announced that the group was like taking a hiatus, I guess as they put it. How far in advance did you kind of know that was happening, or was the writing already on the wall by the time these solo projects were happening?
Yeah, we pretty much knew that. It wasn't planned. It was like an honest, let's take a break, do some whatever we each individually want to do, and then come back together. But during that hiatus, people started going in their own direction and being happy in that direction. It's obviously Justin's success had kind of closed the door on any kind of going back to NSYNC, especially during when the albums were blowing up. It just wouldn't have made sense for him to come back and do an NSYNC record. And the guys knew that. They were very supportive of Justin and said, dude, you'd be nuts to come back. Just do your thing. We're doing our thing. JC was happy that he was getting to do some of his own music, and Chris was taking a break and doing some of his own music, and Joey, the family, like I said, and Justin and Lance was going more into his writing and production stuff. And unfortunately, his space trip didn't happen, but he went through the training, which I gotta give him props for, man. It's not easy to go through cosmonaut training. It's not American training, it's Russian training.
Yeah, which who knows what that could have been like, how intense that would have been.
Yeah. And also, this is the other important thing. At that time, music had shifted so much into anti-boy band that it would have been a very hard sell to come back and do another NSYNC record during that time in music, as well as the fact that they knew, we left on top. We could really screw things up trying to come back and do a record now when the industry had shifted genres to favor more urban and hip hop. So let's just not try to do that,
Well, it seems like the market has shifted again. Like the Backstreet Boys had a huge record last year. And now there's all this renewed interest in NSYNC with their, the Walk of Fame reunion they did and the performance with Ariana Grande. So, I guess what are your thoughts about, like, I'm sure there's been a whole new interest too that you've seen, influx of, different people either discovering the music or rediscovering it again.
Oh my God, I get calls all the time of people wanting to know the inside scoop. Are they going to do another record? And I was like, I don't know. It's like, I called JC and I said, I'm getting all these questions. I don't know what to tell people. He goes, well, what have you been saying? And I said, well, I just said, I don't think you're going to do another record. Everyone's pretty happy where they are. I mean, it was fun to do, the thing with Ariana and the Walk of Fame and all that stuff. But really, everyone is happy where they are. So, sure, it would be cool to do another record. But, there's a lot of more things could go wrong than right. And I think the guys are, they're not stupid, and they're quite happy where they are. So, I are they going to do another? I don't know. I don't think so, but don't quote me on that. But the vibe I'm getting from, the ether in the air is that it's probably not going to happen, and it's mainly because they'd have to walk backwards, and also Justin probably wouldn't be doing it, which would take a key element out of the group. Justin wasn't just a pretty face; like, he brought a great vocal ability that Justin and JC had a great, combination. And if they did a record without without Justin, all that would fall on to JC for the leads, and the other guys as well would have to step up, and the dynamic just wouldn't be the same. So if the album did good, people would be like, okay, but if it did really good, that could be shit too, because now they're gonna have to pull themselves out of this life that they're happy in and do touring and stuff.
Yeah.
And that could not be a good thing. But if it fails, then it screws up everything that they're doing on their own, and it ruins kind of the legacy that they left behind of, hey, we were big, we sold a lot of records, and we kind of left on top. That would be erased. And that's something that they're all very proud of, So to jeopardize that, and Backstreet has never stopped. Then that's why they're still going strong. They've kind of always been there, and so yeah, I'm friends with Howie and talk to him every once in a while, very rarely, and yeah, he's still in the same vibe he was 20 years ago, doing radio shows, doing tours, rehearsals. Like, their lives are still centered around Backstreet Boys, but with NSYNC, their lives are not centered around NSYNC. So they would have to, like I said, walk backwards and try to get back in that mode, which is not really a good thing. And let's be honest, kids today are going to look at these guys and be like, unless they grew up with NSYNC, they're going to be like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? Like, these guys are old. That's what they're going to think. So they get that battle. Backstreet fans kind of grew up with them and have progressed in age with their music. But NSYNC had this big gap. So the label would be like, you got to do stuff for the kids. The kids would be like, who the fuck are these guys? And so it would be an uphill battle for them, and but like I said, don't quote me. They might turn around tomorrow and say, we're doing a record.
Yeah, well, I guess talking about like way things are currently. Talk about what you're doing now. We talked a little bit before we started. I'd love to hear a lot more about what you're doing these days. So
I went and did the South Rockets thing with Diplo for years. And then, did a lot of stuff in the dubstep world with Rusko, and went into the more EDM world and started doing ghost productions for, Tiesto. And so the only reason I could say that is when you do a ghost production, you're not supposed to tell anybody. But Tiesto never fucking paid me, so that's why I'm allowed to say.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, I did ghosting for a lot of DJs and EDM artists and stuff because they're on the road all the time. They don't have time to make music. So, it's a symbiotic thing. I like being in the studio. They like being on the road. So that worked out. And then in 2012 or 2013, just before Skrillex blew up, the label had brought, this was the kind of the point where I said, fuck the music industry. I was at a writing camp in LA, and the label head for Sony was there saying, okay, now in these writing camps, what they do is they get like a bunch of track writers and a bunch of top line writers, and then just stick them in a studio and say, you have to write a song in the morning, and then we're going to shuffle up the people. So you're writing with someone different in the afternoon. You have to write a second. So you're writing 2 songs a day, and there's like 20 people there. But at the beginning, the label head's like, we want songs like this. And they're playing like Kelly Clarkson and all this stuff that was kind of hot at the time. And I was getting sick to my stomach. I was like, and this is coming from a guy who did NSYNC, who's, and I did a lot of cheesy pop stuff. So for me, for my stomach to turn, and this stuff is this crap. Music is going in a different direction. They said, "Oh yeah, we're all right, Mr. Alex. Where do you think music is gonna be going?" And I said, "This Skrillex shit is the next wave. Is gonna, and Major Lazer, all this stuff, this stuff that I was involved with at the time. I knew that was about to pop into the pop market, and." Some of them never heard of Skrillex, so I played them some of the stuff, and I said, "This is what we need to be doing: is tracks like this, but with pop songs on it." And they just looked at me like I was from outer space. They're like, "That stuff will never make money or sell records or whatever." So it's fine. I packed up my gear and I left. And driving home, I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm not gonna get a call from these labels anymore." And then, like 4 months later, Skrillex gets 5 Grammy nominations.
Oh God!
And they start calling. "You're right. What's the next big thing?" So, I went into that world for a while. 2013, then 2015, 2016 comes, and I've just had it. Because every label is calling asking for the same. We want a song that sounds like what's on the radio. You give them a song that sounds like what's on the radio. They go, "It sounds too much like what's on the radio." And nobody's winning. And I'm trying to tell these labels that, the old days are done. The new pop stars like Lord at the time and all this stuff are these kids that are just doing shit in their basement, and it sounds cool, and it's translating into the pop world. And the big guys, and I know I keep bringing up Max Martin's name, but like someone like Max Martin, he knew that. That's why he still was writing hit songs. Just the tracks were changing, but he was still on writing the top lines of these hits. As someone who makes money make money 2 ways. You get paid for the song when it goes on the record. They give you in advance, and then you make money off royalties. But as we all know, labels aren't making any money off record sales anymore. They're making off touring, right. So they're not paying anybody any advances or upfront fees or whatever. It's like, okay, if your song goes on the radio and if your song goes on the album and it's a hit, you'll make money off royalties. But we all know nobody's buying. So you're only making money off airplay and stuff. So now there's a huge divide. Either you're at the top making a lot of money or you're at the bottom making nothing. And I'm not young anymore. I got a family and I got bills to pay. And honestly, I just hated working with shit artists. These people can't sing. And it's just it sucked. I just hated the music. So I decided, fuck, I just want to do film music. Because funny enough, before all this stuff started, the reason I started messing around with music was to make hip hop beats, and also I wanted to do film music. I heard like the Blade Runner soundtrack and all this Hans Zimmer stuff. Even though the Blade Runner soundtrack was old, but when I was a kid, just getting into the music industry, there's 2 sides of me. There's the hip hop side, and then there's this film scoring stuff. And I just always wanted to score films. The music shit just happened to take off. So, my dreams of being a film score guy, took a back seat. So I decided, I want to score TV shows and films and stuff. I've done a bunch of shows for like Netflix and Disney and stuff. And let me tell you, I get to do cooler, newer, trendier shit that's like so cool and underground. I get to do all that stuff in TV and film. And I don't have to deal with artists. I don't have to deal with, because as a writer and a producer, you can do your best work, the best job. But for that song to become a hit, you have to rely on everybody above you. Does the label feel confident about it? Are they going to market it properly? Is the artist going to do something stupid on stage and fuck up and tweet some anti-Semitic thing? And, so all these variables are above what I do. And it just started to suck when I was making great songs, and then it would go 3 people up the chain, and it would hit the A&R guy, and he had a shit day that day, and he's like, this song, fuck it, no, I don't like it. And that's it, it's done. So, yeah, went into TV and film, and man, it's like, I'm doing cooler stuff for kids shows, for like a kids cartoon I'm working on right now. They're letting me do like cool synthwave stuff and real like kind of, stuff like Rez and all this other cool underground stuff. And labels call me every once in a while, and I play them, what's bubbling up, and they're like, nah. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Everything now is an 808 and everyone sounds the same, and it's just not fun as an artist. I do love some of the new stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love, obviously I'm from Toronto, but I love the Drake's albums and Weekend and all that stuff. I love that stuff. But for every one of those, there's like 20 Drake wannabes, and it's all playing next to each other with the same kick and snare and the same melodies, and yeah, it's just not fun, So
it's a lot of rinse and repeat. Like I said, I work with a bunch of the different labels, so like a lot of them, it's really interesting to see what wave they tried to ride with certain artists that they come out with, and like, why they're signing certain people. It's really interesting. And definitely echoes a lot of your sentiments there. Like it's just obviously a much different industry. So, and that's cool that you're doing, things more on your own terms, and like you said, like getting to do the kind of music you want to do, and within the framework of these shows. What shows can we hear your music on?
So I've scored them all. So there's a Disney show called Counterfeit Cat. I think it's on Hulu and Disney. And another one I did for Netflix called Cupcake and Dino. They're both animated kids. They're like kind of Gravity Falls type of thing. They're not like adult, like,
yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
It's not like a regular show or whatever. And the one I'm working on now, I can't talk about the one I'm working on now, but it's the same type of thing. And then I did like music for Jordan Peterson documentary, some commercials I don't do so much of because I don't like working with ad agencies, but yeah, the TV stuff, and a lot of my own personal music has been, used in like Trailer Park Boys, and I look on my royalty reports and I'm like, oh, they put that, like, I don't even know, they just put it in a movie, and it's cool stuff. It's like, damn, that was a cool tune. I'm glad it got used in something. But TV world it's like every week it's like, here's this episode. By the end of the week I have to have all the music done. So it's go. But I love working with, I only really deal with one person, the director. And the directors I've gotten to work with have been cool. Like, they're like, dude, I'm like, the last show, they wanted a certain style and said, no, we should do it all like synthwave. Are you familiar with all the synthwave stuff?
No, actually,
it's
I'm
like
not.
Real 80s kind of dark and grimy, kind of Daft Punk meets Giorgio Moroder. It's like real cool electronic music. And the director was like, yeah, let's do it. So now it's like, oh, it's, you know what? Stranger Things was the thing that opened the door for synthwave. Oh, the music for Stranger Things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you know, for years I've been trying to do that style of music for TV stuff, and they're like, no, well, it's a bit too cool. But after Stranger Things, I've been able to do it's opened the floodgates for music for every show. You know, it's changed the game where you know, this really cool underground synth stuff does work. And I don't have to deal with artists. I'm not tuning vocals. You know, I'm not making an awesome track and having an artist come in and sing something crap over it, you know.
Yeah, right.
And and the economics are there. There's a business model there, and with the music industry, you can have a hit song and you're broke, and when the money does come in, it's so little because you know, the YouTube and the Spotify's and stuff, they pay fractions of a penny on plays. And so it's tough. And it's not like, I'm not saying everyone should be getting paid, you know, amazing amounts of money, but people have to realize for every hit that you have or anything that's financially, you know, successful, there's 99 things that didn't make money, you know. So it's like, yeah. So when you don't make a lot of money off of a hit or a moderate hit, then it makes it hard to do stuff that isn't a hit, and then that pressure gets put on, and the labels, you know, the labels are trying to play. The problem is they're in a pass the buck mode, and what I mean is A&Rs will only sign something that sounds kind of like a hit or is produced and written by someone that has hits in the past. So if it fails, the president's like, what the fuck? The song didn't sell anything. The A&R can go, but I got the same guy that did this hit or whatever, and their job is secure. If A&R nowadays takes a chance on something new and different and it blows up, that's great. But if it fails, they're going to get fired. So A&Rs are playing the safe route. I don't want to get fired. So I'll just do what the formula seems to be. But the word safe and art, they don't work together. You know, the greatest, awesome, coolest fucking records are not ones that are safe. You know, they're even like a Taylor Swift album, that 1985 record. Yeah, it sounds safe because they're pop hits, but it wasn't. It was a very drastic move for her. You know, so when you look at a hit record,
it's all about context.
It's usually a record that was breaking down some barriers or doing something different. Very rarely do you have a hit record that sounds like someone else's hit record. You know, like Adele, right?
Yeah.
Like that record sounded different. But if another artist said, I want to make an album like Adele, it's not going to sell like Adele. But that's what the labels think. They think, well, Adele sold, so make us a record like Adele.
But that's what made, I think, what you did with NSYNC so great, is that it was different. It was ahead of the curve. And like I feel like a lot of the, even like Backstreet Boys' first couple albums maybe had, like, they kind of sounded alike. But like you said, like, there was different sounds and everything you were going for, and that's what made it unique. Even like you said, bringing in and like how they did pop and everything. So that's really cool about, you know, all the work that you did and the body of work that you have with this group, and that's why it's still so beloved today by us and their legions of fans. So, you know, and you know, we said it at the top of everything, but like, we really can't thank you enough for you know, sharing everything. And like, I know we've kept you for so long already, and we, you know, is there anything you'd like to say to our listeners and NSYNC fans? You know, any message to them or anything that you know, you said you get hit up a lot these days. Is there, what would you like to say to address the NSYNCers out there?
Just that I appreciate every message I get that's, you know, positive or even negative. I don't care. You know, like, but I appreciate it because as an artist, and I don't mean that in me as a singer, but as someone who creates art, that's really the payment. That's what gives me the not confidence, but yeah, okay, great. Because there's nothing worse than creating a piece of art and nobody hears it, or no, so it feels good when people say, man, I love that song you did on this record or that. And if they have questions, I'm always up for, people are always asking me technical questions too. Like, what did you use to make this sound? I'm totally love talking about that stuff, because it's something I put my heart and, my creative energy into, and when it gets recognized, it feels great. And I'm just, I'm so glad that there's still an NSYNC fan base out there that appreciate, because I think the guys are super fucking talented. And back then there was a big divide of people that loved them and people that hated them. And I'm glad now that as time has gone on, people have looked in retrospect and said, yeah, some of it was cheesy and some of it was what it was, but there was something there that was cool. And, it's stood the test of time. It's changed how people look back at it, I guess is what I'm saying. There's people that appreciate it now that hated it back then. And, that's cool. I think that's really cool,
Absolutely. Well, again, we can't thank you enough for your time. And, I'm sure there's even more stuff there's probably so much more that we could cover.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But like, but yeah, maybe if you'd be willing to, we'd love to have you back sometime, and maybe we can talk about more. I'm sure there's so many stories from everybody, you guys living together alone, that we didn't even get to touch on. And some of the other artists and things.
There's lots of stuff I can't talk about, but lots of stuff. I'm not. There wasn't any like drugs and hookers parties. I'm saying there's more of just funny things that have happened that obviously are personal that we can. But there's. I mean, you can only extrapolate, how crazy things were back then, that every day there was always something funny that happened, and when I tell people some of these stories, they're like, it sounds made up because it's so crazy. And I'm like, I know, but those days were crazy. It was literally like, anywhere and everywhere you went, people were either yelling at you for, you guys suck, or we love you, and take this, and, marry my daughter, and why don't you come to my house and drink a $30,000 bottle of wine because I like you guys. It's like just stuff like that, right? This weird stuff that...
Yeah, well, again, can't thank you enough and really appreciate your time. And, like I said, we'd love to have you back, and you're welcome anytime you want to.
Yeah, man, I'm going to keep listening to your podcast now that I have you on my radar. It was funny. I just listened to the one and I listened to the other ones and the other ones, and checked out the covers and stuff that you guys have done. And yeah, man, it was cool.
Thank you.
Definitely
Really
gonna keep on with you guys,
All right, guys. That is actually the end of our Alex Greg's interview. It was so amazing. I'm still kind of speechless just, thinking about it now. And it's so amazing that we got to hear all these stories from him, and, hear all this stuff about JC and even Justin's solo album, all that stuff. Crazy. Just, like I said, I'm just thinking about it now. It's all crazy. And, for me, just being a huge NSYNC fan, just to hear all this stuff from, the guys that made my childhood, it's just still, amazing. So, we have so much more in store for you guys soon. And, thank you guys for, so much for sticking around. So, and we'll see you next time on the Digital Get Down.